Welcome back, lads and ladettes, to episode 66. Man, we've been on fire recently, Philly. We've said big things are coming, big things are on their way. Not quite yet, but we're slowly picking up steam, man. Slowly picking up steam. So we're excited to come back for another episode.
Yeah, we brought the heat so far this year, 2021. We had on Marcus Phillips. We brought out Josh Goodwin to talk Raptors and NBA. And then we ended up having Matt Yee and AJ Skirving on to defend Waffles. And then we said, you know what? Where can we go from here? Oh, how about we get a professional soccer player to come and join us on the podcast? So that's a little lined up for this episode. But as everybody knows, we do player intros and a little 1v1 competition. So for episode 66, we were thinking like, what do we do for, like, how do we create an even competition for 66? Like, we know there's one guy that comes to mind as soon as you say 66, and that's just the way
Josh
it is.
Hosang.
I didn't even think about that. But we're like, who could we possibly put up against this guy that we would even have a fair shot at picking? Or like, what competition could they do? And the answer is there isn't one. There's nobody that could beat this one player. And who is that guy? Who's the
It's
like
definitely not Josh Hosang. It's Mario Lemieux, man. Like nobody can beat him in anything. One, the guy's so skilled. Two, he's like 6'6", like 230 pounds. Or like I didn't even bother doing the size and weight and like history and awards because it's Mario Lemieux, man.
It's just
I know he's a rig and I know he's a talented ass guy. So like there's nobody that could beat him in anything.
No, there's no way around it.
The guy had cancer, beat it, and then played it but like professionally again.
And I'm pretty sure he was like he came back and he was one of the best players in the league. Like as soon as he came back, there's no stopping him. So like, there's just no point of even making a competition because that would just be unfair to the other person. So this is just episode 66, the Mario Lemieux episode. So
yeah,
let's not waste any more time. And we've got a great interview lined up here. We learned a lot about professional soccer, college soccer, and then even just like getting to go and play and represent Canada and men's national team. So that being said, let's head over to our interview with Alistair Johnston. Joining us now on the Lads and Lawnchairs podcast, an 11th overall selection by the Nashville SC expansion club in the 2020 Super Draft. He played 4 full seasons of Division I soccer, starting with St. John's University, being named to the Big East all-freshman team in his first year and being tied for the team lead in points in his second season. He then transferred to Wake Forest University, where he captained the team in his final season, making it all the way to the Final Four of the NCAA tournament. He currently plays for Nashville SC and has just returned from Canada's senior national team camp. Welcoming to the show, Alistair Johnston. Alistair, how's it going, buddy?
Wow, you guys make me sound better than I could ever make myself sound, so appreciate that. How's it going, boys? How are we doing?
Pretty good.
Not
Thanks.
too bad.
Thanks for joining us. We like tried to catch up with you for a little while and like things kind of just weren't working out just based on where you were at in soccer and with us trying to sort some things out with school and work and whatnot. But I think it kind of ended up out perfectly at this point because now we have even more to talk to you about of all the different things you've gone through. So I want to start from the beginning. You started playing soccer at a young age. If you go on, like you have a full Wikipedia written up about you, kind of where you started and how you got going. Was soccer always like your main passion? Was it the only thing you played or did you play other sports along the way?
Well, it's funny you bring that up, Zach, because Zach, if anyone wants to know, was my first ever rep team goalie.
Yeah.
He was in there. But like everyone else on that team, I'll tell you what, by the age of 13, everyone was gone because they all quit to play AAA hockey. So where we grew up, Roar, Ontario, it was big. It was soccer, whatever you were doing in the summer, and then it was always hockey in the winter. So for me, it was the same. Unfortunately, I just wasn't very good at hockey. You know, single A was kind of my peak, I want to say. I think that was my highest level. Everyone else was playing AAA or York Simcoe, wherever you guys were, Mark Waxer, I want to say a couple of guys were. But soccer was definitely my biggest passion for sure, because I realized, like, all right, you know what, I'm probably a little better at this than I am at hockey. And growing up in more of a soccer family, it was kind of always the thing that I always leaned towards. And for me, watching hockey was always a fun pastime, but the best thing for me was on the weekends, waking up and watching the Premier League and stuff like that. That was always the thing that kind of piqued my interest the most. So soccer was definitely my main passion. But yeah, I did play a lot of hockey growing up. And I think I kind of try and bring some of that into my into how I play soccer. I'm a bit more of a physical guy. When you see a Canadian guy, you're always a little curious, like what's he doing on the grass and on the ice. So I definitely try to hit some guys. Definitely a more physical defender than a lot of guys would be in my position. But that comes with the part from growing up in Canada. You have to be a little tougher and definitely playing hockey. And that's probably the biggest part I miss, is that I was always a fourth line grinder. I was never anyone pretty. It was get in front of the net. It was leave some late checks, get pucks deep. It was the simple stuff for me back in the day. But yeah, so those are the two sports I always played growing up. And I unfortunately had to give up hockey once soccer really became a full-time sport as well. But at the same time, pretty much my team folded because everyone else decided, we're going to have to give up soccer to focus on hockey. So that was those are the beginning years, I guess you could say, of my sport life.
So at what point did you give up hockey? And then I guess the second part to that would be, do you kind of think that focusing on one sport is something that is beneficial to people? Or would you kind of think that obviously for you where you're at in your career right now, I don't think you would change anything, but do you think it is beneficial to people to be able to keep playing a secondary sport higher up into their life and further on?
Yeah, so I quit hockey. I quit competitive hockey around 13 or 14. And then I played a couple years of house league with my older brother, which was a good time, until probably 15 or 16. I honestly think it's great to play as many sports as possible at a young age, and really kind of, you learn different ways to play different games. And you really kind of get an all-round, all-encompassing approach to what kind of sports you want to play and what you think you'll be best at. And for me, I made tons of different friends playing different sports. And also I think you kind of mold your body to different sports. I'll tell you what, I go on the ice now, my legs are exhausted after, because using all these different muscles, so much more core, so much more pushing. And I think that was something that also really helped me from a young age. It's I was never a big kid. I'm still not a huge guy, but always from a young age, I always kind of had bigger legs in soccer too. It's just because I had the cardio from all the soccer running, but then I also had thicker legs just because of all the cutting and the pushing off and the blade work that you do in hockey is just a different level, all the crossover and everything that we were doing. So I think it gave me a good base in terms of core and all that stuff. So honestly, I completely lean towards if you can play as many sports as possible, but there is going to be a time if you really want to specialize in something and you really want to have a go at a sport, it's normally around that 13, 14, 15 years old where you're going to have to make some hard decisions. And everyone does it. I mean, you did it at a really young age. My younger brother, who was also a really good hockey player, he decided to give up hockey to try and be like me. I know a lot of people in Aurora thought that was a terrible decision because he was actually good at hockey. But he's a great soccer player as well. So that decision is going to have to come at some point. But for me, I would tell people to prolong it as long as possible, because it's also a nice escape especially when you're a super high performance in one sport. For me, going to play hockey was it was kind of, I'm going to go out and really enjoy this. There's not as much pressure. There's not as much expectations put on you.
Just for the fun of it.
Yeah, I'm playing single A hockey with the boys. I'm just going to go, whatever. I'm just going to go out and have some fun. Exactly what it was. It's pretty much a beer league at 13. It's we're just having a good time. And I think that's such a great outlet for people, because when you're putting so many hours in your main sport, you kind of need that release. So I would say, yeah, definitely play as many sports as possible until your coach for that main sport says no more.
Yeah. So once your team folded in Aurora, and like you said, not a traditionally big soccer market up there, more so focusing on the hockey, what was next for you? Your team was folded, and you kind of, at that point, you decided soccer is what you wanted to pursue. So where did you go from there with no club, and what was the next step?
Well, the next step then was, all right, I've been a pretty sheltered Aurora boy my entire life, playing with my hometown team, playing with the kids I grew up with. And a lot of these kids, you play soccer with in the summer, you go to school with, and then you go play hockey with. So this is kind of almost it's a bit of a family in a lot of ways. So leaving that was definitely going to make the first step. I'm all right, if we're going to succeed in this is going to be the baby step that's going to keep going and going. So for that, the next step was just, okay, I got to find a team where I'm going to play. And at that point in my career, we needed to find somewhere where the coaching was going to be a high level and the players were going to be high level. Because at that point, games are one thing, but it's all about the training. You're training 6 times a week, you're playing 1 time a week. At the end of the day, if the training's not good enough, you're not going to progress. Because you're 13, like 14, 15. These are the years that you really need to take those steps in terms of progression. So for me, I went out. I went to Richmond Hill Raiders, we were a pretty stacked team as well. And after 1 year, that team also folded because they all went to TFC's academy, which opened up that year. And I was like, am I an enigma or something? You know, like everyone just leaves after 1 year when I'm there. But so yeah, that team then left, but that was an astounding team. I'll tell you what, you look back on that roster, tons of guys still playing pro to this day. And lots of guys have gotten their chance, which has been a good thing. But for me, it was always, you know what, I've never been someone that likes to be somewhere where I get comfortable. And I kind of realized that as I grew in age, is that as soon as I get comfortable, I can sense myself starting to plateau a little bit. It's like the whole situation is too easy. You don't feel that drive necessarily. You never feel, if you don't feel uncomfortable, you're not ever going to push yourself. And that was a big thing for me, is that my next kind of move after that, the next big one was over to Vaughan. I had a quick pit stop at A&B Academy, but then I went to Vaughan. And I'll tell you what, I was 16, and I remember walking into the first training session, and it was an absolute zoo. I mean, we had guys from all over Southern Ontario and guys who were pros. We had guys, the range, I was the youngest by far, and it went pretty much from 17 to 23-year-olds. And like some of these guys are ex-pros or pros right now. They're just back training their off season. I'm a 16-year-old little white kid getting thrown out there going, all right, yeah, welcome to Vaughan. Welcome to the Vaughan Hotel is what they called it. And I was like, oh my goodness. So that was like the next big step for me, is that like, okay, you know what? Like there is a bit of hierarchy here, you know, like you have to show some grit and show that you belong. And that was really a big thing for me, especially like those ages. Again, you need to tune yourself physically and the technical stuff, but it's such a mental game too. And the training I got there, just learning from those guys and learning like what it really takes, like easily any day could have said, no, this isn't for me anymore. Let's pack it up. Let's call it a day. But it was never that. It was always like, you know what? I love this challenge. Like I can feel myself getting better. And like every day you have to push yourself, because otherwise you just wouldn't fit in and you get made fun of. It was as easy as that. So those are kind of my next steps before going down to college.
So why was it that you never ended up going into the TFC program? Like we went to Bill Carruthers and we were surrounded by tons of guys of all ages who filtered through there and transferred or made the move from their youth clubs into the TFC academy. And that just was never something that you went through. Was that a personal decision that you didn't want to? Was there a lack of interest? Like why was that the case?
I would love to say it was a personal decision, but it really wasn't. It was funny. So like we had a starting 11 and I was starting on that Richmond Hill team, and they took 10 guys. The other 10 starters and not me. I was tiny. I mean, you remember me back in the day. I didn't grow much until I got to university, actually. Even then, my first year university, I was 135 pounds playing a defensive mid. It was a little egregious, to be honest, that I was even out there. I looked like a child. So it was always that thing with me. It was always going to be a size problem. But you see, like I took it as a challenge, you know. It's like, all right, that's fuel for me. It's like, all right, you don't think I'm big enough? Well, someday I will be. And if that's going to be your only reason, then I'm going to get better technically. I'm going to get better in all these different aspects of my game, so that can no longer be an excuse. And I tell you what, it was great. I heard that line so many times, and the number of coaches, whether it was like regional teams, provincial teams, that always kind of just push me off TFC. Like, you know, it's just, we don't see you here. We don't see you as a pro. And yeah, it was fair credit. Those kids that went to Bill Carruthers and were in that academy at that time, great players. But a lot of those guys, you know, a lot of their careers never really made it to that next step. And that's kind of the thing, is that I always thought it's like, I would rather peak in my 20s than at the age of 16. I don't want to be the best 16-year-old ever that didn't make a single dollar, that didn't get the chance to play for their country or didn't get the chance to play professionally. I didn't want to be that kid. You know, I was like, you know what, if that's what it's going to take, like, perfect. This is just another little hurdle, another bump in the road, but I'll get there. Everyone has their own path. And I knew my path was going to be a little different than most, but you know what, it was another little, it was just another obstacle that I had to overcome. And I look back on it and I wouldn't have done it any differently.
I just want to touch on quickly, you had a little stop in with A&B football, as you mentioned there. And then I was reading online that you ended up through A&B, you earned a tryout with a pro team in the French league. Is that accurate? It says the Troyes AC.
Yeah, so I went over, I was 15. I went over to Estac-Trois, which is just outside Paris. I spoke a little bit of French, definitely wasn't the level needed to be to stay over there, but I went over there for tryout for a couple weeks. I'll tell you what, it was a great time. But you really realize, like, wow, like soccer in Canada versus football anywhere else in the world, it's like, especially France, a huge footballing nation. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
these guys take it seriously. Like, and I realized really what it was going to take for me at that point. Like, I was trying to get my high school education, and then I was planning on going to college, getting a degree. And I went to over there and I saw the life these kids were living. I'm like, man, these kids wake up to the field, grind, back, classes with absolute parentheses around. Like, you came and called them classes, what some of them were doing.
It's
and
the
then
London
right back
Knights
out
high
to
school
the field.
program.
Yeah, exactly. The London Knights. Yeah, we all know that one. Yeah, I remember Cliff Poo going through that one, a couple of the other guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was exactly that. It was just like, man, am I really going to be fully committed? Because like at that point, again, I was still young. I hadn't fully made up my mind. Obviously, I wanted to be a professional soccer player, but it still seemed like a big pipe dream at that point. So it was like, if I really go down this route and I commit to going to France at the age of 16, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to come back to Canada at the age of 19 or 20, and I'm not going to have a high school degree potentially. Like, that was something my mom was not exactly jumping for, as you can probably imagine. So it never really ended up being something that I was fully committed to jumping towards, but it was a great opportunity, and it really opened your eyes to like, all right, if you want to do it, this is the level of commitment it's going to take. And it's also nice to see the level over there. Like, all right, what do a league academy kid that's my age look like in comparison? You know what? It wasn't that big of a difference, which was a nice feeling for a change when you always look at like, Canada youth soccer player. All right. So I always say it's like, if you're the best hockey player growing up in Canada, you're one of the best hockey players in the world. If you're one of the best soccer players growing up in Canada, who cares? Like, who are you still? So It was kind of cool to go over there and see, you know, like, we're not that far off. You know what? Like, it's not that crazy of a jump to that level. So that was also a really cool learning experience that I saw over there.
So with that extra motivation kind of coming from France, you end up playing for League One for Vaughan Azzurri. And for those who don't know, it's like a semi-pro league in Ontario.
Yeah.
So what was the skill level difference kind of jumping? One, you were playing with Vaughan for OYSL. What was the skill difference and why did you choose to stay with Vaughan? Was it a development thing again, like you mentioned earlier?
So Vaughan is it's a great melting pot, I'd say. It's where all the best players come to play, that whether they were kicked, like, you know, the TFC turned them away at some point. We always were called the misfits. So it was pretty much all the best players that were still playing from the ages of 18 to 25 would come and would join at Vaughan, and you would show up to a training session. You wouldn't know if there was going to be 10 guys there or 70. So it was always fun like that, but it was a great level. The coaching staff was unbelievable. I still go back there and train whenever I'm home. They have so many connections and just great guys. And it was great to get the opportunity to play for that League One team. I was 17. I was still a young kid. And I'm getting to play in a semi-pro league, which didn't hurt, you know. And the biggest thing for me was you're no longer playing against other kids. You know, it's not 16 versus 16-year-olds. It's 17. You're going up against a 28-year-old. And again, it's just another part of your game that you need to add in. It toughens you up. And those were great opportunities. And that was when I'd say it took the most molding into my career. I'd say I was like the biggest influential part of my career was probably when I was about 16, 17, playing at Vaughan and really getting thrown into the fire a little bit. And that's when you kind of realize, like, all right, is this something I really want to do? Or if it wasn't, and for me, that was when it was like, yeah, this is the plan, and I'm going to make this work, whatever it takes.
So then I guess like kind of at the beginning of transferring to League One and like making that move is when the recruiting process starts for Division I schools. At what point, I guess, did you start to realize that Division I was going to be a possibility for you? And then how did the recruiting process kind of start? Did teams start reaching out to you? Did you have to go searching for teams? Like where, like, how did that begin?
So again, every single year in Canada, the level has gotten higher and higher in terms of soccer and the recruitment. And that's just all due to the past years doing really well and coaches going, you know what, like, there is talent up there. I'm going to go up and look. And again, that comes down to my Vaughan staff having great connections. That was one of the biggest things is when I went there, as I knew they had a history and kind of a pipeline of setting guys down at D1 to play D1 soccer. And that was a big thing for me. I wanted to get my education paid for. And I was a big college sports fan. I mean, I loved watching college football, college basketball. And I was like, man, like, I can go to a school where I can get to go to those games. That'd be pretty sick.
Yeah.
So that was always something that was in my mind, and recruitment was a little difficult for sure. I was still kind of at the beginning of the Canadian pipeline, I guess you could say. There'd been a couple years prior, but still not a ton of big schools were looking. Like the biggest one that would come up normally would be Syracuse, just because it's so close to home, or maybe Michigan or Michigan State. other than that, a lot of the schools further south would just kind of recruit nationally or go overseas to Europe. So for me, yeah, it started around end of 11th grade. I realized I'm like, you know what, like I think I'll have a chance. And it was always kind of my plan was to go down south, but I was like, we'll just see how it goes. Keep my options open. But as soon as 12th grade started and the recruiting process really got going, and then I started taking some visits to some D1 schools, and you're like, wow, like this is gonna be fun. Like I went down to one down in Florida, and I was like, man, I could be just sipping pina coladas on the beach and doing my schoolwork, and then going to the field to play pickup under the palm trees. I'm like, that doesn't sound too bad. So it was a pretty cool moment once you realize, like, wow, and they're gonna pay for my education. Like, are you guys kidding me right now?
Yeah.
So that was really cool. So 12th grade was a bit of a whirlwind at that point. I kind of like, all right, school, like, you can take a back seat for a second. I know I'm going to graduate. I did my SATs and all that. I'm like, I'm going to get into school. I'm fine. So then the big thing was just the commitment process and all of that, and going on all your visits and just trying to pick the best choice. So I ended up going to St. John's. I wasn't heavily recruited. I was hurt my senior year, which didn't help. And again, as you guys probably know already, I was undersized. I was a small dude. But no, St. John's is a great fit for me. Played in the Big East, which is a huge conference. And yeah, I got to live in New York City. It was crazy. I lived in Jamaica, Queens, the same neighborhood where 50 Cent was shot. So my parents were a little nervous dropping me off there at the age of 17 in the summer. But no, I had a great 2 years there. And that kind of was the next step into going to Wake Forest, which was always my aspirations, was to get a college degree, a really good college degree. And Wake Forest was a top 20 school in the nation, and still is. And they were the number one team in the nation for soccer. And if you watch them play, they pride themselves on playing Wake football, we like to call it, Wake footy, which is our version of, the Barcelona kind of tiki-taka, lots of possession. And that was something that always kind of intrigued me, I guess you could say, as a player who likes to think of myself as someone that likes to play with the ball and keep it on the deck. So that was a great fit for me. And when they came calling to transfer there, it was a no-brainer. And then, yeah, I had another great 2 years there. So that was just a brief one of my college career. But yeah, that's kind of how the recruitment process goes. It's a wild one. I'm not 100% sure how it works for the hockey. I haven't talked too much to Cam Wright and some of the other guys that I played with a long time ago about how they did it. But yeah, it's a nerve-wracking experience because there's lots of dollars that you're not 100% sure where they're going, and you're always kind of held in the dark. But it really helped for me to have a good coaching staff at Vaughan who had the connections, who could call these guys up. He'd show me his contacts, like, yeah, which school do you want me to call? I'm like, all of them, like, all right, what are they saying? It was one of those ones. So I had some great connections. I'll tell you what, like, I owe a lot to Vaughan for getting me down there and getting me an education. They're definitely the real ones that help that.
Was there could you explain what a visit is like, what a typical visit is to a school? Both my sisters are at school in the States right now, so I kind of have some idea, but I know listening to like Spit and Chicklets, they have guys through there who went on NCAA visits and they tell some stories. And I've heard other guys who went on visits for all different kinds of sports, but would you be able to break it down a little bit, what your typical visit is like?
Yeah, so each school is going to do it a little differently. So my first one, when I went to St. John's, that was a fun one because they put me, my mom flew down as well because she wanted to see the school. They put me in a hotel overlooking Times Square, and this was right after New Year's. So they had like the whole New Year's Eve ball out and stuff. It was a beautiful hotel. I was like, all right, this is a decent start. Coach was picking me up, drove me around downtown, showed me some of the things in New York City. Then they take me back to the school. They'll give you a bit of a walkthrough of what they expect out of the program, what they see. They'll show you all the facilities, show you around campus. And then sometimes you'll meet the team. But the thing is, it has to be super short. I can't remember the exact, I'm pretty sure they're 48 hours max.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a whirlwind. You go down there and you have to kind of like, you have to really take it all in and see, like, can I see myself here or not? And then my next one at Wake, when I was transferring, went out with you'll go out with a couple of the guys. I already committed, so they knew I was coming. So I went with some of the guys to dinner with the coaching staff. Then we had a nice big party, of course. That's normally a traditional one with a visit, especially if you know that they're a guy who is okay drinking alcohol and enjoys a party per se. They'll definitely normally throw a party. Go out, you'll meet the girls. You're gonna kind of get a vibe of the campus. I'll tell you what, at my Wake one, I woke up on the wrong side of campus. And I don't know how I got there, and I had a flight the next morning. Oh my goodness. I didn't even know where I was. Hung over as shit. Oh my goodness. Had to find my way back across campus, somehow get into the dude's room who had my stuff, grab my stuff. I was so lucky. The only reason why they were awake is because they were going to a darty right after. So they'd already started drinking for the darty.
Nice.
I was like, that's lovely. So that was the only reason I was actually able to get in that room. Because I was like, I banged on the door. I was like, please, like if I can't get my stuff, like I can't get on my flight.
Yeah.
So luckily I banged on. He literally just opened up the door and he had a 2-4 in his hand. I was like, you're kidding me right now. Like these guys are insane. Like, oh yeah, well, thanks for having me and all that. And I was like, oh my God, I want to go here. This seems like
I'm home.
like a solid place. Yeah, I'm home. Exactly. I was like, you guys win and you do this? He's like, yeah, like we enjoy winning. Don't get it wrong. I was like, okay, yeah, sign me up. Where do I go? So that was my one at Wake, which is a little different. Definitely a little blurrier, I'd say, in terms of the details, but for a good reason.
Could you just like take us through a little bit about why you decided to transfer? You touched on just the fact that how good of a school Wake Forest is, and then how good of a program they had. But you were doing really well at St. John's. You had been named to the Big East All Freshman team, and then you were tied for the team lead in points in your second season. But then you decide to leave and move on to Wake Forest. Like, could you take us through like? Did you decide to leave? Had Wake Forest been contacting you to come there? Like what went into that?
So Wake Forest wasn't allowed to contact. So this is before the transfer portal, which came in about 2 years ago now. So I said after my sophomore year, I was like, you know what? It's time for me to go and challenge myself a little more in the classroom. And if I really want to have a go at being a professional soccer player, like I need to go to one of these big schools that trains like a pro. And that was the biggest thing for me about Wake is at St. John's, the starting 11, solid, could compete. But in your training sessions, it's not just about the starting 11, it's about the next 11.
Yeah.
It's all about, if you're going to play 11v11, the level needs to be high. And at Wake, like I came and I went on my visit and I remember seeing him like, man, this kid played for the U.S. youth national team and he's redshirting. Like he's not even getting a chance to play. Like he's not even allowed to dress. I was like, oh my goodness, like the depth that these guys had, the talent they're able to acquire is just insane. And I was like, you know what, if I really want to take that next step and really have a go, at being pro, like my training level, everything just needs to be a little harder and it needs to be in a more professional environment. And that's what Wake offered. And I could feel myself at St. John's, like I had a good first year and I had a good second year, but I could feel myself plateauing a little bit. I was like, you know what, I'm not really developing tactically and I'm not really developing as a player like that I need to be. You're 18, 19, like these are big years. These are important years. I mean, you look over, I remember watching the World Cup, Kylian Mbappe is scoring the World Cup final and he's my year. He's a 98. I was like, man, and I'm over here, just not getting better. So it was definitely a step that needed to be done. And thankfully, when I said, I wanted to transfer, it wasn't an easy process. The coach at St. John's really wanted me to stay and it didn't make it exactly easy for me to go. But luckily, I was able to get a release to talk to Wake Forest. They flew up before they actually had the release to talk to me. He flew up, the coaching staff flew all the way up to Toronto. We put on an exhibition game the Vaughn team did. So 11v11, me and a couple of other college guys who were home for Christmas break. We played. Bobby Muse, the head coach of Wake men's soccer, was standing there on the sidelines, liked what he saw. Couldn't even talk to him after the game. He went out, talked to my coach in the parking lot. I had to walk right by him, couldn't say anything. He then gets right on back on a flight back down to North Carolina. And then a week later, finally, my release came through. So he was allowed to talk to me. He called me and instantly like, what were you doing at this moment? Like, what was your thought process? Like, he was like breaking it all down. I was like, man, I love this. I was like, I eat that stuff up. I was like, all right, good. Someone who's going to have a go at me. And the best part was they said like, hey, we're not guaranteeing you anything. You're coming in. At this point, I was still playing the center of the park, center midfield. And they had the best midfielder in the nation. He was the number 1 ranked player in the nation. And they had 2 other returning guys who were in my class. So he's like, yeah, we're not guaranteeing you any minutes. But if you come here, you're gonna have a chance to get better. And I was like, yep, yeah, sign me up. Like I never been someone that wanted to have anything given to them. So that was a pretty easy decision. And also educationally, another easy decision. I really wanted to further myself and I wanted to get a good degree. I wanted a degree that, if soccer does stop, which it will at some point, I'll have a chance to earn some decent dollars doing something else, which I might not love as much, but that was important to me. So, and especially my parents. So I was good. I was able to graduate from Wake Forest with a degree in economics, which was nice. So hopefully I'll maybe be using that not too soon in the future, hopefully a little further down the road, but that was the decision. Yeah. It's in the back pocket somewhere. That diploma somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah.
So the next year after that, your final year of school, you get named captain of the team. What was that like? What was the amount? Well, one, you came in kind of with no expectations, so I can't even imagine what it was like to be named captain of that same team where you weren't promised anything. Did you feel a lot of pressure in that role, or was it more of a welcomed thing, like a challenge that you were ready to take on?
You know what? The initial reaction was like I couldn't believe it. Because I'd only been there a year, and a lot of the guys they come in a semester early before their freshman year. So a lot of the guys in my class who were going to our senior year have already been there 3.5 years. And
Wow.
instantly I'm like, man, I've been here 1 year and I'm gonna be a captain. I'm like, but the cool thing was is it was the players voted and then the coaches made the final decision. So it was really cool. I was like, originally I was like, man, like, am I overstepping my boundaries here? Like, but then I realized I'm like, these guys voted for me. Like they're the ones that see it in me. And I
Yeah.
was like, man, that was such a cool moment. You really realize like these guys want me to be their captain and they see me as their captain. I was like, that's a pretty cool moment for me, especially being still relatively new to the program. So I saw it as like I was just immensely proud. I mean, that's one of my dad's like favorite things. Man, like who cares about me getting drafted? He's like, man, like you went into a place historically good soccer program and you were the captain within 12 months. Like that's a pretty cool thing. And I hold that one pretty close to my heart as well. Like it's something that I hold pretty close. It was just a cool moment and being able to go out there and wear an armband. It's the same in hockey, like wearing that senior jersey. You feel a little different. You're like, you know what? The eyes are on me. Like I need to perform. You can't have those moments where, you let yourself down, you let your team down. He's like, no, like I'm a leader. I'm a leader by example. I'm a leader vocally, and I'm a leader on and off the field. And it's a really cool moment for me, and really kind of set me, really set the expectation, that bar as high as I want it to be for that senior year. And it went well for me. I tell you what, I took it on, and I didn't see it as added pressure. I saw it as like, look at this, like this is another opportunity, and what a great chance to be able to represent my family, myself, and this program to be the captain of it.
So you kind of got to experience a bunch of cool things in that senior year, going from you in your first year at Wake Forest of this, I think it was 17 games that you played that year. You didn't start a single one.
Mm-hmm.
And then your fourth year, you started every single game that you played in. You end up being named captain. And then on top of that, you guys go to the NCAA tournament, and there you experience some things you had probably never experienced before in your life. And that being one of the big ones, you played against your brother. And your brother, for those who don't know, is 3 years younger. He was playing his freshman year, right, at Maryland.
Yep.
And you guys knocked them out of the NCAA tournament. And if I'm not wrong, I think you scored the game-winning goal that game, right?
Not in that game, unfortunately. If I did, oh my goodness, you never would have heard the end of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's got to be ultimate bragging rights.
Trust me, it was bragging rights no matter what. So that was, my senior year was crazy. This team and Wake had always been known as being the number one team throughout the entire regular season, and then we always kind of choked it a little bit. Whether it was the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight, we kind of struggled. So this senior year, I was like, man, this is my last chance at it. Like, and as soon as I saw the draw came out, I was sitting in class. And I remember looking over my phone. My phone just started blowing up. And I was like, what happened? Like, did we not get a number one overall seed? Like, what's going on? And I check. It's like, yo, you need to look at it. We're going to play your brother. It's just like, if they beat Iona, they then play at Wake Forest. I was like, no way. I literally, as soon as that happened, I texted my brother. I'm like, you got to win. Like, he's like, oh, trust me. We'll handle Iona. And it was great. Yeah. So I was my senior year. So my last year, and he was in his freshman year. He played in the Big Ten. I played in the ACC. So there never really was a chance for us to play against each other. This was the only chance, was if we got lucky in the NCAA tournament. And I tell you what, we did. They won their game. They took care of business. And that was a super cool moment for myself and my family. As you can imagine, they all flew down to watch that one. And we handled them pretty good. We handled them 3-0, slap. He wasn't happy. He was just doing doggies the entire game, trying to chase after me, which is great time. And it was the right way to do it. And he even said after, he's like, you know what, like, our team was definitely not as good as yours. And it would have been a bit of a bummer if I'd been the one that knocked you out and taking your chance at winning a national title, because he knew his team was a little far off of it. They might have had a chance of making a run, but it was never going to really be a chance. Like, we had a great opportunity. So he was like, you know what, if it had to be me, it had to be me. But I was like, man, I would never have lived that down if I'd lost my younger brother in my last college game.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
So then when did you score? Because I thought you had scored against them.
So I didn't score in that game. So that was round of 32. And then we played Sweet 16 against Michigan. So another Big Ten school, beat them. And then in the Elite Eight, we played UC Santa Barbara. So this was my last ever game at Spry. So what happens is the Final Four College Cup is all done at one venue. So I knew no
Okay.
matter what, like we were the number 1 overall seed. So we were hosting all the way up to College Cup.
Yeah.
So I knew like this is the Elite Eight. Like no matter what, we win or lose, this is my last game at Spry Stadium, the stadium here at Wake Forest. So I was like, all right,
You
I
guys
gotta
have a
send it off
sick
in a good way.
stadium there.
Yeah, it's a sweet stadium. I'll tell you what. And when it gets buzzing, this place, which I'll tell you what, it's never been as loud as when. So in the Elite Eight, we were struggling a little bit. We weren't having a great game, and I got the ball, took a couple guys on, got a lot lucky, I'd say. Ended up scoring. So I scored my last game at Spry, and that place was shaking. Oh my goodness, we ended up winning 1-0. So I scored the game winner there, and that was some type of moment. It was the perfect send off for me. In terms of that being your last game and playing in front of the crowd and everything. It was a pretty cool moment. So yeah, especially as a senior captain, this is everything you dreamed about. And now you're going to the College Cup. So there's no complaints there from me.
Playing in Wake Forest, you guys are located in North Carolina. So you go from New York City, like the Queens campus is where you were on in St. John's.
Yeah.
And I looked it up. It's about like 35, 40-minute drive from Times Square. And then you go from there into Wake Forest, which is North Carolina. So you end up in two pretty solid places to play college sports. Which one, strictly from school and soccer aside, which one would you say was the better place to just go to school, like be a student or a college athlete?
I have to say, I'm going to have to go with Wake. I mean, New York City, I'll tell you what, oh my, if you're above 21 down there, you can have a lot of fun, but you better have a deep pocket because it ain't cheap up there at all, especially as a college student. But I mean, Wake Forest was great. So the North versus the South is so different. Like the South, you really get into, now you're in football country, like this is like, these are true, like Southern, when you think of when you grow up in Canada, you see those American colleges, the ones like, this is exactly what Wake is, the brick and mortar, just beautiful campuses, tons of money. You can just see it. You're like, wow, like that's a place you want to be in. And that's the great thing is like, you go to a football game, we're playing Clemson, you're playing like huge schools like Duke, UNC. These are all schools in our conference. So I think as an student athlete, for sure, it's gotta be, and you can't say no to the weather down here in North Carolina.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, tell you what, it's going to be a tough sell ever coming back to Canada after living down here and now in Nashville. It's definitely a tough sell.
You mentioned Nashville, so I think we should get into kind of like your foray from college to the pros. And last year, you were fortunate enough to be drafted 11th overall by Nashville SC in the MLS Super Draft. What was that whole draft experience like?
Tell you what, I was nervous, man. I was going into my senior year. I didn't even think I was going to get drafted. I was looking at places to maybe play overseas, try and get a trial somewhere. And as the season progressed, it went well, but it still wasn't anything at the forefront of my mind. It's just like I was so focused on like, hey, let's win a national title. That's what we're all here for. Let's do it. This is our last chance. So as soon as we got knocked out, I just remember like, crap, like I'm not a college athlete anymore. Like I'm done. Like it was such a weird moment. And then my agent called me. He's like, hey man, like great news. Like everyone thought you played great in the NCAA tournament. You played great in the College Cup. Like we're looking at big, like a solid draft number. Cause I was thinking like, all right, maybe if I get drafted, the rumors I heard like maybe second round, I was like, hey man, if I get drafted, I'm going to be buzzing. And then as time went on, so College Cup was end of December, mid-December, and the draft's at the beginning of January. So those next couple of weeks, man, everything I heard was just like, no, now you're late first round. You know what? No, you're going to be around the 20 mark. And then it kept going up and up. And I was like, what's going on? Like, are they seeing something? What are they watching right now? Because I'm just sitting at home. I'm not doing anything. Like, there's no way I could be selling myself any better than I am. So I was a little confused with that, but I was like, hey man, like the higher I go, the better. Like no complaints here. So it was just a crazy day. Because that was the first year they did the draft virtually. They sent up a whole camera crew to my house. They put the MLS had a whole camera crew in my basement, videotaping my family and stuff. It was just weird. And I'm sitting there just sweating bullets, man. I was like, This is crazy, for everyone else. Like, I tell you what, watching drafts growing up, it was always so much fun. You're like, oh, who's my team going to take? As a player, it sucks, man. Cause like, you're not sure, like one pick, it's Montreal. It's like, oh, you're envisioning like, oh man, I'm going to be in Montreal. Okay. What's my life? Like, what's their team? Then like, no, Montreal doesn't take you. They trade the pick. You're like, okay, I'm not going to Montreal. Who traded for the pick? It's like Nashville has now. You're like, holy, like now I'm thinking like Nashville, like it's so easy. Like within just split seconds, it's like you can vision your life one place and you're like, no, you're on the other side of the continent. It's crazy like that. So I was, by the end of it, I was like, man, just tell me where I'm going. Like,
Yeah.
I need to
Yeah.
sleep, I was just like, I'm so over this. I've been sweating bullets, I just let me know. And I was really thankful, Nashville wasn't even on my board where I was expecting to go because they were an expansion team. They were selecting second overall. And I knew I wasn't going that high, that's for sure. But then they obviously weren't going to get their next pick till the beginning of the second round. And I've been told that I probably wasn't going to slide till then. So I was like, Nashville was one I hadn't even really thought about, them or Miami, because they were the two new teams. And I saw they traded up. I'm like, what's Nashville doing right now? And then they were like, my agent's like nudging me. I'm like, what? And I see his phone. It's like the GM from Nashville. He's like, yeah, we're going to take Alistair. I was like, oh my goodness. So it was a pretty crazy moment. Cause like, again, I was trying to envision like all the teams I could go to. Nashville wasn't even one of them, but that's what I'd say to anyone going to a draft is like, don't worry about that. Like, you're only going to dig yourself into a hole doing that kind of stuff. Just focus on what you can control, and that is something that's so out of your reach. So yeah, I mean, tell you what, I was just excited to get down to preseason and get it started with Nashville.
Yeah, I saw that video today of your like draft recap and the whole like camera crews in your basement. There's like 40 people down there watching it live. That must have been pretty intense. Even just like the actual like excitement and nervousness aside, you must have been like sweating. There was so many bodies down there. Even if you weren't nervous,
like, we need to get some fans. I'm like, guys, we need to
Yeah.
get some fans. We need to crank the AC. I was like, open up some windows or something. Like,
This is gonna be my national TV debut, like
Exactly.
for the MLS. And I'm just sweating bullets down here.
And the worst part is that because it was Adidas is the MLS, so they sent up a package and they're like, yeah, like you need to wear this or this. So I was like, man, I have to wear this. I wasn't gonna wear a gray Adidas T-shirt and you're gonna see pit stand. I'm like, no chance. I'm wearing the black sweater.
Yeah.
So, but now I got a black sweater on. I'm like, I can't even take this off because I don't even want to see what the undershirt's like. Oh man, I was just like, as soon as my pick was taken, I'm like, camera crew, we're done. Get me out of here. I'm getting changed. Like, oh, it was. Luckily, I went early enough. If I had to sit in that spot for another hour, I wasn't going to be in a great place. I'll tell you that much.
So I want to know, do they send like a whole bunch of team packages to your house, like shirts, jersey, hat, scarf, like whatever they send for when you get drafted? Like, how does that work? Did you just have every MLS team's like gear in front of you laid out?
So this was the funniest part of the whole draft. This is the funniest part is so because it's being streamed, we're a couple seconds behind, like we're a minute or so behind. And so there's a dude that works the MLS and he's there and he has all the scarves for all the teams and he lines them up like 1 through 30, what the picks are going to be. So as soon as, and he's got a mic on, so he knows, he's like, all right, this guy's going with that pick. All right. Then he takes that scarf. He's like, all right, you're not going to Miami. So like, it hasn't even shown on the TV yet, but I'm like, all right, I'm looking over at him. I'm like, okay, so I'm not going to Miami because that scarf's gone now. And the next one comes up and you keep seeing it. And that was the craziest part about Nashville is like, because Nashville traded up to get me. They paid money to get my pick. So it was, I forget who it was who had the pick originally, but their scarf was there. And they were like, oh, they're on the clock. And then all of a sudden the MLS dude, takes the scarf away and puts a Nashville one there. I'm like, bro, it's not Nashville taking. It's not Nashville taking the pick right now. And then it comes on the screen, Nashville's traded. And I could see him going like, all right, everyone get ready. And I'm like, am I going? Like, is it me? Like, so that was the coolest part is like, if you wanted to know what was actually going on, you had the foreshadowing. You just look over at the dude who's pulling the scarf. So he knew everything before I knew it, which was like, it's just like, man, it just shows how out of control it is for you. Like as the player, like these dudes know exactly if I'm getting picked or not. And they're not telling me anything because they want the reaction to be as realistic as possible. I'm like, man, just tell me where I'm going. It was one of those ones. So yeah, that's what they did. They had the scarves and they were doing the swapperoos all around. It was weird.
That's hectic. I can't imagine just kind of looking at the scarf guy, like talking your age. Like there's so much going on.
No, the whole time the camera's on me, but my eyes were over there doing that. I'm constantly just checking. I'm like, is it me? No? Okay. It's funny.
So you were supposed to play your MLS debut in the MLS's back tournament in Florida, but you guys ended up pulling out because of COVID cases. That must have been tough, kind of expecting one thing, and then again, like you're stuck, like waiting, wondering what's going to happen. Is it ever going to happen? So how did you deal with that delay, and did it give you more time to develop?
I'll tell you what, I definitely developed from it, but I'll just touch quickly on that MLS's back tournament. That was now, so we did our preseason, 5 weeks long, a grind in February, in March, came in, played 2 games. Yeah, it's this year it's going to be 6 weeks. No one's looking forward to it. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of running. It's a lot of all that fun stuff. So we done that preseason, then 2 games, and then it shuts down. We're like, oh, you kidding me? So we know, like, all right, everyone's going to lose their fitness, obviously, just because you're not. So we're going to have to do a whole nother preseason. So after a couple months of the quarantine, then we started ramping it up. Preseason number 2. All right, that wasn't fun either. It was a couple weeks only this time, but we were not happy. So then we finally get down to this MLS is Back tournament, and instantly, like, first day, positive test. We're like, oh, no. They make us stay in our rooms. The next day, they test us in our rooms. 2 more. The next day, 3 more. And at that point, you're like, is it going to be me next? So we ended up having like 9 or 10 guys. I can't remember the exact number, but they pulled us out of the tournament. But we weren't allowed to leave. I mean, we're a team that potentially everyone has COVID on. So we were stuck in our rooms, our hotel rooms in Florida for another 2 weeks. I had no balcony. I couldn't even open up a window. So you're not allowed to leave, obviously. And if you left and you had Nashville gear on, they'd be like, whoa. What are you doing out of your room? Like, you're not allowed out here. So we were stuck in there. I mean, you're looking out the window. You can see other teams walking in, going out to play games. And we're just like, oh, my goodness, like, how boring could this get? Obviously, you're stuck in a hotel room. The most we could do is a Zoom workout. So you lose your cardio again. Great. Yeah. So as soon as we leave there, we have to go back to Nashville, quarantine after those 2 weeks. And then guess what? Preseason again, run it back. And it was just like, at that point, everyone's like, man, we've done 3 preseasons and we've only played 2 games in 6 months. Like, everyone's like, this is going to be the longest year ever. So, like, if we have any more hiccups, like, man. But I'll tell you what, it really brought our group together. My team, you know, like, we've been through some shit. I'll tell you that much. Like, we'd seen some things. Our season, our inaugural season, had not been easy at all. But at the same time, I'll tell you what, COVID actually helped me to a degree, as weird as that sounds, because it let us have a lot of individual training sessions because they weren't letting us train as a team, as large groups, just in case. So doing a lot of individual stuff. And as the young guy, like, I was the 3rd string right back at the very beginning on the depth chart. So, like, when they're playing 11v11, like, I'm not even necessarily getting in, you know, like, there's 2 other right backs that are playing, and I was the 3rd string. So it's like me and the rookies, you know, kind of on the other field doing things. You get 10 minutes, you're lucky. So it was nice to be able to do these individual training sessions in front of the coaches, you know, really earn their trust and show them that, yeah, I can play. Like, I got something. You know, I have these young legs and you can use them. Like, I can run. I can do something at least. So that was nice for me. I'll tell you what, it really paid dividends when we finally restarted our season for good. And I got subbed on the very first game. And then after that, I started and didn't really stop starting until I got a red card. But, you know, that's the life.
Yeah, I saw that. I was going through the game sheets. I saw I was like, just didn't play or something. I'm like, oh, whoops.
Hey, that's the trivia. That's the first ever Nashville red card. That is your boy here.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
First and the only one this year. Yeah, I know. I'll take that one in my grave as well.
Yeah. So you get subbed on in that first game, August 12th. You made your debut in the MLS, and 4 days later, you get the start. What kind of transpired in those 4 days to lead to you actually being able to be named a starter? Like you said, you went from 3rd string on the depth chart to being subbed into the game, and now you're starting in the MLS. Like, what went on there?
I mean, our coaching staff's kind of old school in a lot of ways. It's like, hey, especially as a defender, like, we're not going to play you unless you have experience. And that's always been like a big thing. So as soon as I kind of got those minutes, they're like, you know what? Hey, like, he's now played pro minutes. Like, he can start. It was almost like kind of one of those things. It's like, you know what? We've seen him out there. They put me out there for 30 minutes when I got subbed on. They're like, yeah, he's more than capable of handling himself out there. Like, yeah, let's give him a go again. It almost was kind of like that. So yeah, it was weird. 4 days later, and then I actually started that first game. I played out of position. I played on the wing, and that was one of the worst performances I ever put in on the wing because I did nothing. I mean, I was playing a winger as a right back. I mean, I'm defensive minded in the first place. I was like, I'm just gonna go out there and work my balls off. You know, it's just one of those things. I'm just running up and down. But I remember I've never asked for a sub in a game, but that game I was so tired, man. It was like 65th minute. I looked at the bench. I was like, I got nothing left because like. That's the thing. Like, yeah, exactly. Like, when you go to the next level, each level, it just gets faster. And I have to say, like, going to your first pro game, like, obviously I knew I was gonna give her everything, of course. And I was like, man, this game is fast. These guys are big. They're athletic. Like, I'm exhausted. Like, and that was kind of but that was the feeling I knew it was going to happen. Like, I hadn't played a game in now like 6 months or so because of all COVID and everything. And I knew my match fitness wasn't necessarily going to be where it needed to be at that point. So yeah, then after that though, I kind of got the start and at right back, and I locked it down. And we had a really good defensive unit. I was actually playing beside the center back was named Defensive Player of the Year So
Yeah.
I guess you could say, maybe I helped him win that award, maybe.
Yeah.
But more or less, he cleaned up any of the messes I made, which was really nice. He's a bit of a freak. He's the U.S. men's national team center back. He's a bit of a beast. So it was nice playing beside him. He made my life a lot easier as a rookie, for sure.
Actually, cool fact is that the Nashville Predators had Roman Josi win the Norris Trophy Defenseman of the Year, and Nashville SC had the defender who won the Defender of the Year. So you guys both cleaned up on the defensive end that year. That's pretty cool, actually. I don't know if that's ever happened before. It's kind of like an obscure statistic, but yeah.
And it was,
I saw them.
What's funny?
There you go.
Is before the season, we actually went to a Preds game, and there's a picture I have, and Walker Zimmerman, who's the guy who won Defensive Player of the Year, him and Josi exchanged jerseys at the beginning of the year before they knew it was going to happen. It was crazy. But Josi's a great guy too. I got to meet him, super chill, loves his soccer too. That's the cool thing about all the hockey guys is a lot of the guys from Finland, Sweden. They're we're huge soccer fans. We'd love to come out to the game. Just let us know. And all of us, our guys are like, what is hockey? And I'm like, I'm a huge hockey fan. Get me out to the beach whenever you can. It's a good little trade off there. So it's pretty cool. I'm a Canucks fan. So I got to meet Dan Hamhuis, who was down there. No, it's pretty cool. I grew up playing hockey, so it was weird. And I love to try and get the guys out on the ice and see what they got. And it's not a high level, I can tell you that much. But yeah, no, it was super cool to meet the Preds. And yeah, again, what a crazy freak kind of stat that is. They both won Defensive Players of the Year in their respective leagues.
Yeah. That was pretty funny. I saw that picture of the two of them in the locker room. So kind of cool how that worked out.
Mm-hmm.
One last kind of thing here about just playing for Nashville. You guys play against TFC in the playoff round, and TFC, your hometown team. I'm not sure if you had grown up rooting for TFC, but what was it like getting to play against them? Obviously, it's too bad you didn't play in Toronto. It was in Hartford because that's where they were playing out of, no fans, but still. Just the idea of playing against Toronto FC and then knocking them out. How cool was that for you?
I'll tell you what, there's always been a bit of bad blood between me and TFC. They never wanted me when I was younger.
Yeah.
So it was one of those ones I'd love to knock out TFC. And it's funny because the left back, Dan Lovitz, he played at TFC his first couple years in the league, and then he ended up leaving. So he also had some bad blood against TFC. He was like, yeah, we're going to get these guys. And I was like, man, I would love that. There's no better scalp I want on my mantelpiece than the TFC one. But I'll tell you what, it was hilarious because obviously all my friends back home are going to support TFC. That's your team, it's your hometown team. But I was like, guys, I'm sorry. We want this one bad. I'll tell you what, we played. That was one of our best games of the year. And I think TFC deep down, they weren't too mad. They'd been stuck down in Hartford for a couple months. They're living out of a hotel, which was tough for them. I know that night was cold, man. Oh my, but I think they were ready. I mean, they had a great team, some unbelievable players on that squad. They got some big names, but yeah, no, it was such a great performance and exactly the team that I wanted to beat my first year. You couldn't have scripted that any better. If I could have picked one team to knock out of the playoffs, they were the ones. And yeah, no, it was a great performance because I knew everyone was watching back home.
I was watching that game.
Yeah, I was like, Alistair, if there's any game to actually show up for, this would be the one.
Yeah.
So now that you're in the MLS, is this kind of where you want to be professionally, or do you kind of hope to make those steps to move overseas? What do you see for yourself in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm really happy with how my first year went here in Nashville. This league continues to grow, which is a great sign for kids growing up everywhere in North America. This is a viable league. And hopefully, we're going into the 2026 World Cup that's going to be hosted here in North America between Canada, the US and Mexico. And, we're really hoping to build off that and continue to grow this league. So, it's one of those ones. Do I want to try overseas? Of course. I think that's kind of every player's dream growing up. And I'm lucky that I have a European passport, thanks to my mom being born in Northern Ireland. Shout out my mom there. But I'll tell you what, it's something that as a young player, and I'm a huge Manchester United fan. I watch all the games overseas. It would definitely be a bit of a dream come true if I got the opportunity to. But at the same time, I love my time in Nashville and I love this group. And, if all things went according to plan, I would love to stay in Nashville my entire career and kind of go down as a club legend, if that was possible. Yeah. There's no denying that would be a great outcome as well. I see it as either way, I'm going to enjoy myself and hopefully have a great long career. And, if that's in Nashville or in the MLS, all the best. And if I get the opportunity to go overseas, then I'd love to take it. It's one of those ones.
So with Nashville, you've kind of been pretty open about doing media content, social content for them. I looked through, I watched, like, you did, I think, 2 vlogs for them of the day in the life of a pro soccer player. I think they call it Life Off the Pitch vlogs.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the first thing I saw you do was you were like the weatherman. So you had your hood up, mask on at this time. It's pissing rain, and you like went over to the social media person and told them that the game was postponed. And then again it happened, and it was actually pretty funny. In the other one, you were like, hey guys, if you're seeing me, you know what this means, like the game's being delayed, like this is a bad sign. Have you always been pretty open to social media and comfortable with that? Or was this something that came new once you came to Nashville and you realized, like, hey, okay, I'm good with this, I'm comfortable, I like doing this?
I think you could ask anyone that knows me well, is that it's tough to get me to close my mouth and just shut up for once. So they realized that pretty quick once they got to know me, and once I got around the guys, that I was a pretty big personality. So I was a pretty easy choice for them, I think. And once they did it once, the weatherman definitely kind of stuck. And I have good fun with it. It's great. It helps my brand too, and it's good to have that interaction with the fans, and I think the fans love it as well. So it's always been fun. And I've never been one that's camera shy. I love doing podcasts like this. I love just talking and giving people some insight into my life, what I've been through, and like what the life is like of a pro soccer player. So that's always been something that's really cool, and I've been super excited, to do that kind of stuff for Nashville, and I'm happy that they love to select me to do those things. And also, it's like, hey, this guy's the rookie. Like, whatever we tell him, he's going to do. He's not going to turn us down. You ask one of the big name guys that on the big money, they're going to go, no, I'm not doing a vlog. Alistair? Oh, yeah, sure, of course. Like, they have a little, they know what they're doing as well. But I would never turn down that stuff, no matter what year in the league I am. So, yeah, I try to just enjoy it and give some good insight, because I just see it as like, man, I'm still a fan of the game. Like there's nothing I like more than really getting to know what are those guys in the team that you support really like what is life like to them? Like, are they good dudes? Like, are they funny? Like, what is a typical day like? And I think, like, if I can have any type of, if I can show that to my fans and to show that to the Nashville SC fans and MLS fans around the country, like, all the better. That's what I kind of see it as, is because as a fan, that's exactly what I'd want.
As like a hockey fan, I feel like there's like not that much of it in hockey anyway. So I mean, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see that, like, it's kind of trending upwards. And I'm the same way. Like, everybody likes kind of getting to know what their favorite athletes are like as human beings, away from the pitch, off the ice, whatever the case may be. And speaking of cool, or potentially you could make the transition and not only doing it for the club, but doing it nationally. As you recently returned from Canada's national team camp, what was it like, one, getting the invite to that camp, and just being able to potentially represent your country on a national level?
Yeah, I mean, it's the call that I think everyone grows up wanting that call, no matter what sport you play. If you get the chance as a Canadian kid to go and put on the Canadian jersey of any type, I think it's one of the coolest moments, especially for someone like me who'd never got to represent Canada at a youth level. It was definitely something. It's like, wow, like, I've really kind of gritted my teeth, and I've done my work, and it's just like, it's nice to see that they're watching and they know who you are, and they see you as a valuable part potentially of that roster, of that national team. And I think that'll be the coolest moment. Like, it's going to be hard to top that no matter what I do in my club career. Just getting the opportunity to put on the Canadian jersey, pull that over your head, will be definitely one of the coolest moments. And from all the guys that I've talked to, all my friends who have gotten the opportunity already to play, it's just like, that's their number one shining moment. Like, that's the one, like, I'll never forget that one. So yeah, getting that call and just hearing that was, it's euphoria, I guess, a little bit would be the easiest way to say it. Just like relief. It's just a cool moment. You're like, man, like, I might get the opportunity to really represent my country. And I think, yeah, as a kid growing up in Canada, that was always the main thing that I wanted to do at some point, was get to wear the Canadian crest on my jersey at one point.
That's awesome.
All right, so before we wrap up here, we put out on our Instagram poll if anybody had any questions for you, Alistair. So we have some write-in questions, and we picked some of, like, our favorite ones that we want to get into. So I'll start it off. One of the ones that we got in here. What is the softest or like the worst chirp that you've ever heard on the soccer field?
Man, I'll tell you what, there's definitely been some pretty poor ones. But most of the ones are when they speak in a different language and they think you're not going to understand it. And those are always my favorite. Like they see me and they're just like, all right, some random Caucasian, you probably American. And like the French guys will try and say something. And then I'll go back to them and I'll pretend and I'll just look at them and I'll say a swear word back at them in French. And they go, and it's so funny. They're like, oh, wait, he understands us? Holy crap. Like it's always a funny one like that. I'm trying to think what's the worst chirp, I honestly, growing up playing hockey and soccer, I used to talk a lot. As I've gone to the league now, though, like I know I'm like the lowest paid dude in the league. I'm the youngest guy in the league, and I kind of need to work my way up to really start talking. So I don't normally start talking unless they have a go at me. If they have a go at me, then I'll give some back. But I haven't heard too many terrible ones yet. But I think the funniest ones are definitely when they speak in a different language and they think you don't know it, and then you just come back with something, and they're just faced are like, oh no, like wow, we undervalue this guy. This guy's got something. So those are always funny.
The next one we have here is, have you ever seen Miley Cyrus or anyone famous in Nashville?
You know what? I have to get back to you once this pandemic really kind of comes to an end. We haven't been able to get out too much, but from what I've heard, Nashville is a pretty lively place for the celebrities too. I've driven by some of their places down in Nashville, and I'll tell you what, these guys living nice down there. But yeah, no, I probably the biggest dude I've met so far is probably Roman Yossi, which is still a pretty big name.
Yeah, not a bad one.
And I'll tell you what, guys, this dude is like the mayor. Him and Derrick Henry are like the mayors of Nashville. Like these guys, you see them, like they're cool dudes too. Like Roman Yossi always like a leather jacket or something with his girl on his arm. You're like, everyone's like, man, that's Roman Yossi. You're like, yeah, that is. And then obviously Derrick Henry, an absolute beast for the Titans, the running back. And he's a pretty noticeable dude too. If you see a deep freezer walking down the street, like, to get out of his way. He's built like a semi truck. But that's probably the coolest dude I've met so far. But I'll have to update you guys once the pandemic kind of, goes away. Hopefully soon.
Well, do you like country
really
music?
Experience it. I didn't love it, but it's grown on me. But it's good. All the bars down there, they'll play country on like the first floor and then more like hip hop on the upper floor, which is always good. But yeah, no, it's grown on me for sure. My roommate too, he's big into the country. So he's tried to push me into it. And, I've gotten a little bit into it, Morgan Wallen and some of those guys, I can get behind some of that kind of country stuff, but still not my go-to genre, I would say.
Okay. All right. And then last of the fan questions that we selected here. Hopefully you don't take this one in any kind of disrespectful way, but I think it's something that people have noticed, which I think at this point, it's more of just a funny thing that I notice in professional soccer at any level. And this person wants to know, is there something in the water that they bring out to players on the field when they get hurt that makes them recover so quickly? Because I know a lot of people say it's like, it's the magic water.
Magic spray, baby.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, most of those injuries, extremely tactical, not as much a painful thing. Because like, hey, if I need to stop this counterattack, the biggest one though is if you have a head injury, they have to kick the ball out of play. They have to stop it. So a lot of times if you're faking that one, it's like, all right, like you better have a head injury. But a lot of the guys, like they see a counterattack or something, or like they're realizing like we're in a bit of trouble here. Like we need to stop this game down. It's so tactical just to, hey, my hamstring or something. And everyone knows. And I'll tell you what, it works to a degree, because if you can just cut the game for just a minute or two and just, kind of stop that momentum, I'll never do it. Being a Canadian growing up, like, you can't get away with that. You can't get away with diving or faking an injury. And I've never once dove to try and earn a foul or anything or faked an injury. You really wouldn't get away with that growing up back in Canada. Oh my goodness. But I'll tell you what, the Latin influence is a little different in soccer. So there might be something special in that water. Might be something, but I'm not sold on it yet.
Yeah, I don't think your friends would let you get away with that either.
Yeah, no. My phone would be blowing up. It'd be like, I would have thought how my phone looked, I'd won the World Cup, but no, they would just be ripping me for I tell you what, my friends, I can barely even call them friends, the stuff that I get from them sometimes. It's hilarious. It's like, I have a great game, and then they'll like all have taken a Snapchat of me having an absolute laugh at one point in the match. They're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, you know what? Like, let me live a little.
Yeah.
But that's what friends are for, huh?
Exactly. Well, thank you for taking the time to do this and coming on and sharing a little bit about your journey and how you've come from youth soccer, battled against being the small guy, all the way up through to getting to Division I and playing on the number 1 ranked school in the nation, leading the team as the captain to the Final Four, and then being the 11th overall pick in the MLS Super Draft to now being a legitimate starter in professional soccer. So congratulations for that, and thanks for taking us on this journey with you.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you got to let us know whenever you're in Nashville and see some celebrities.
Oh, don't worry. I'll send you
Shoot
guys
us
some
a DM.
pictures.
Yeah,
I'll give you
please
guys take a quick one. All right, guys.
Unreal.
Thank you.
Thanks
All
for
right,
joining
man.
us,
Thank
man.
you for taking the time. Good luck with the rest of with next season.
Appreciate it, guys. Talk to you later.
All right. You want to just wrap it up?
Sure.
Right.
What an incredible interview. I mean, like we were kind of talking amongst ourselves, Philly, after Alistair left. Just what a well-spoken guy. From the moment he came on the interview, just he meant business, really delivered, super fired up with that interview.
Yeah.
And it was great to have him on.
Yeah, it was really exciting to get to hear from him. And as he mentioned kind of at the very beginning, I played soccer with him when I was like 8 years old. If you actually think about that team, I was the goalie, and then I shared the net with Jared Brown. Jared Brown, we went to Bill Crothers with, but he ended up playing Division I soccer as a goalie. Alistair goes on. On that team, we also had Cam Morrison, who played at Notre Dame for hockey and is playing, I'm pretty sure it's with Chicago Blackhawks now. And then there's a couple other guys like Matt Mena was on that team who played in the OHL as a goaltender and stuff. So there's a bunch of athletes on that team. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
my goalie partner ended up playing Division I. So who knows? Maybe if I kept playing soccer, but
Yeah, there's something in the water in your soccer community.
yeah,
in the 98 age group.
It was pretty cool to get to have him on. I've been following his career all the way along. I know him and I will like shoot back and forth a couple like every now and then just to see what's going on and like reach out and congratulate him on doing all these different things in his career. So it was pretty cool to get to catch up with him and hear about that. So yeah.
And the just the casual economics degree from Wake Forest to boot. In case his career wasn't enough.
Yeah. But yeah, that was pretty cool. So I think we're just going to keep going from here. Like there's just so much diversity in the content we're bringing everybody, and I could not be more excited. Like this has just been so enjoyable. Yeah,
it has been, man. It's been an absolute treat just getting to see your face every week and bring the content too. I really like how we're talking about everything and anything, having listeners on to join us, give their 2 cents. We've been a part of the people, but even more so as of late, which is a cool thing. And we'll definitely keep that going as long as you guys are willing to share your input and let us know when we're wrong, when we're right. But yeah, it's dude, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
So just thanks for all the support.
Yeah. Well, that about does it for episode 66, the Mario Lemieux episode. Nobody else could beat him. Like that's just point blank. Mario done for. But yeah, that's all she wrote for episode 66, McGee.
That's all she wrote. Great interview. More big things to come. We'll catch you guys next week. Same time, same place, same lawn chairs. Cheers, lads and ladettes.
Cheers.